Hello, everybody. Welcome to 4 Minute Film School. I hope that you can see me now. I hope that you can hear me. If you can see me and hear me, please do let me know, either in the Discord chat or the YouTube chat. My name is Valentina V, and I am the resident pro at Aputure Lighting, which basically means I'm an ambassador. I talk about lighting way too much, but I also love lighting, as I'm sure you'll see in this stream. I'm like obsessed with lighting. So, um, Kukai Maya says that they can see me, which is awesome. I'm so glad that everybody is able to join me today. I'm streaming from Los Angeles, so it's 8 in the morning here. Looks like everyone is here. Let me know where you are watching me from. Where in the world are you? I want to know. I'm in LA. Where are you? How is your Friday going? Have you watched anything new recently that you could recommend to me? I feel like I haven't been watching anything except for Dave on FX. Cal, you're welcome. And Mondo Cheapo says rockin' and rollin'. Awesome. Well, today is a very exciting stream because I'm going to go over two lighting lessons. I'm going to go over how to light products and how to do interview lighting. And then we're going to have a little discussion afterwards. So looks like we have people tuning in from Manchester, from Portugal, from France, from Edinburgh. I hope that's how you pronounce it. All right, let's go on. So today, the first thing that we're doing is product lighting, and specifically we're going to look at a beer bottle commercial because I feel like it's kind of the most complicated thing that you can light. Not only does it have reflections, but it's also see-through and clear, so there's a lot of things to account for. Let's just get on with it. Again, let me know if you can hear the video and audio. Hey, it's V from the A-Team, and today we're talking about product commercials. Specifically, how do you light them? Let's go. Hi, welcome to 4 Minute Film School. My name is Valentina V, and I'm here with Brent Barbano, who is a cinematographer and co-founder of ShareGrid. And he's fresh off shooting some Nike product videos, so we thought, what better lesson than product video? And then product video. And then product video. Back into it. Let's see. I know the stream dropped out a little bit, so don't you worry. We are just going to back up and come back strong. Let me know if you can see me and hear me. Duck66 says, good job, the mics are muted. We can't hear Valentina cursing. Yeah, I'm just all kinds of profanity. If you can see me and hear me, give me my code word. Let's do Strawberry. If you can see me and hear me, write strawberry in the chat, and that'll let me know that it's working. All right, where were we? I think we were around. I see strawberries. Awesome. I think we were around here. So, what is your first consideration when thinking about how you light this bottle?
First thing I look at is color, of course. And this beer bottle in particular has a lot of yellows and tans, and of course the bottle itself, the glass, is amber. So to complement that, we lit the background with a blue light. We had a Quasar 4-foot in the back of the bar with party gel blue, and just kind of illuminated the background to really make the product pop.
And also the product has blue on the label.
Yes.
So it complemented that nicely.
And the label has a little bit of green, so we actually strategically placed some green bottles in the background to kind of complement and bring out that green in the label.
So something to consider, first of all, before you even do any kind of lighting is what is your production design, right? You have an orange tone here. So therefore having blue in the background will do like a nice color contrast, color complement. And also not only is it doing a color contrast, but it's doing a location, right? So you have a bottle and then you have the bar, obviously, which is like the typical location where a bottle would be, and then more bottles in the background. Something else that I want you to pay attention to is we have the foreground, middle ground, and background playing at the same time. So we have another bottle here, and this is a dolly shot that moves side to side. So what you'll see is when we dolly side to side, that foreground bottle will also move and create a parallax effect, which will just create more depth in your image. So before we even get into lighting, having a setup like this is really awesome. I would also, I think, like to pay attention to the way that it was staged so that the bar in the background isn't entirely behind the bottle. There is still this kind of breakup in the background here, and that really, really helps, especially when it starts moving.
And bring out that green in the label.
So how do you light the bottle itself?
There's a lot of lights that went into lighting just this one bottle, but we'll start with the key. We first keyed it with a 300D with a light dome and a control grid on it. People
are saying there's no sound. Is there sound now? Can you hear me? Can you hear the video?
Can people hear us?
Trust, we'll figure it out if it's not working right now. You're all getting sound good? Is it working? Sound is fine. Sound is fine. Comment cucumber if you can hear the sound and if it's all fine. Okay, it's weird. It's working. Did you hear what I said about the background of how to production design the background, how to set up the actual shot first before you do the lighting, just to make sure that you can have as much dynamic as possible? Everyone never had a problem on the YouTube side, so looks like everything's good. Let's keep watching.
Out that green in the label.
So how do you light the bottle itself?
There's a lot of lights that went into lighting just this one bottle, but we'll start with the key. We first keyed it with a 300D.
Now, for those people who may be new to Aputure lights, the 300D is a single source light, which means it can be a very, very hard light. You know, hard lights are like the sun or like an HMI or like a Lico, something like that. But it can also be a very soft light if you put a modifier on it. What's cool about all the Aputure lights is that they have this mount. So this is called a Bowens mount, and it is a standard mount that is found on a lot of actually photography strobes. But because it's such a standard mount, there is a lot of different attachments that are already created. So if you don't want to buy an Aputure attachment like this one, like the light dome, you can get soft boxes, you can get snoots, you can get barn doors, you can get like a million different Bowens mount accessories. What's cool about the light dome though, this one, is that it has a gel holder inside. So because this is daylight balanced, it doesn't have a tungsten option and doesn't have RGB options. So the only way to gel it is to put a gel in front of the light. So this one, this modifier, the Light Dome 2, has a gel holder inside. So you can put what's called CTO, which is color temperature orange gel, to create this daylight light and turn it into tungsten. So in this case, that's exactly what they did. They put a CTO gel on it, so it's orange, right? And then they also added a grid to the front of the light dome so that that light is directional and not scattered. So let's just keep watching.
With a light dome and a control grid on it, just off to the camera right side.
Philippe asks, is that the one with the Fresnel glass on it? No, so the Fresnel is an additional attachment, and we'll definitely talk about it later. But this one does not have a Fresnel. This one has the light dome on it. So the Fresnel and the light dome, different attachments.
Of it, just to give it a little bit of shape. And then we brought in a little bit of fill with a gold side flex fill. Once we lit it with the light dome, we noticed that the reflection on the bottle, which obviously is a very long shape, kind of created a circular reflection. We really wanted to get those.
So what he's talking about here is you actually do want a reflection on the bottle, but you want the reflection to be in the shape of the bottle, right? And he's talking about this reflection right here. And you want it to be skinny, and you want it to go up and down. So when the reflection that the light dome naturally creates is a round reflection, right? Because it's a round modifier. So initially you would have something like a hot spot here, and then nothing else on the bottle. So let's watch how he created this skinny reflection.
Long, clean, crisp, symmetrical reflections on the bottle. We brought in 2 flags on either side and trimmed the circular shape of the key light to give it that rectangular reflection that we were looking for.
Another way to get long reflections is to use long lights.
Yes.
So that's also what you did.
So to backlight and give a nice rim on the bottle, we used 3 quasars. We had 2 4-foot on either side, and then gave it a nice little rim.
So if you didn't get the initial how he created this long skinny thing right here, this long skinny reflection, it's actually pretty simple. So take a look at this. He has the bottle here, right? And then this is that 300D2, I believe that's the correct model. And then this is that light dome modifier. And of course that light dome modifier has that orange gel in it. But then what he did was he brought in these 2 black floppies, these 2 cutters, and he put them like this, up and down, so that the only light emerging through the cutters is a skinny little sliver of light. So that is how he was able to create that. So the light coming through would be just this little area. And it wouldn't go ahead and like throw light all over the entire room.
We were looking for.
Another way to get long reflections is to use long lights.
Yes.
So that's also what you did. So 96 Frogger said, why did you CTO the light rather than adjusting the white balance on the camera? We CTO'd the light because there's a lot of other colors and lights going on in the scene. So it should actually be daylight balanced because of the other lights we're about to introduce. You're just ahead of me a little bit. That's a really good question.
Backlight and give a nice rim on the bottle, we used 3 quasars. We had 2 4-foot on either side, and then gave it a nice little rim around either side, both perfectly even. And then at the top, we noticed that the cap of the bottle was kind of missing something. So we brought in another 2-foot just to give that top cap a little.
The other thing about these quasar lights is that they are not dimmable by default. So you do have to put them on a dimmer if you want to have more control over your quasars. But there are a lot of other tube LEDs out there, or tube-like elongated LEDs that are already dimmable by default. One that I really like, that I'm actually using right now as my key light, it's called Spiffy Gear Specular. And what's cool is you can make it brighter, you can make it darker, and you don't need an external dimmer for that. Hoya Vision TV says, can you share your light plots? I don't know if I can.
kiss of light.
So the bottle itself looked like it had a light within it, like it was radiating light.
Yeah.
How did you accomplish that?
This is actually one of my favorite little secrets with product lighting with bottles. We actually cut out the
really
shape
cool.
of the bottle in 250 diffusion, taped it on the back, and then we lit it from behind in tungsten mode with the Mini 20 light.
So the Mini 20 light from Aputure is kind of like, think of it like a mini version of the 120D. It's a single point source, but it's not as punchy. It's just very small, and it comes in two flavors. It comes in the Mini 20D for daylight and the Mini 20C for color temperature adjustable. So in this case, they didn't need to add any CTO on this because it's color temperature adjustable. So they just dialed it to tungsten instead of having to put a tungsten gel in it, but you can gel it. There's gel holders inside, so you can gel it if you want to. It also has a Fresnel built in that you control off the back, so you can like spot and flood it as well.
Mini 20 light. And it kind of a little soft, even glow.
That's such a good trick.
Yeah.
And altogether, it creates this beautiful look of the bottle itself.
Makes you thirsty.
I noticed you added.
So before we get into the background stuff, I want to take a look at this setup right here. So let me pull up that bottle shot again. All right, it doesn't matter. All right, let's just go into the slides. So remember, we already covered this, right? This was the 300D with that light dome with the cutters. Next thing that he did was he placed those quasars, so those tube lights, 3 of them right here, to give like a nice kind of rim and outline to the bottle. So these were like the 4-foot quasars, and then he placed a 2-foot quasar up above, but it was more like here, to be honest. It wasn't that far back. And then lastly, to light the bottle, he put some 250 diffusion, 250 diff, and he cut it in the shape of the bottle, because obviously if you send a light directly into the back of the bottle, there's going to be just a big flare, a big highlight. It's not going to illuminate the bottle evenly. So he took that Mini 20C, and then he just hit the back of that 250 diffusion to make it look like the bottle was glowing from the inside. So that's how he lit the bottle itself. It took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lights to do.
Together, it creates this beautiful look of the bottle itself.
Makes you thirsty.
I noticed you added one more light.
We noticed there was a staircase in the back that kind of really didn't have anything going for it, with a really beautiful brick pattern. So we took an Aputure 120D2 with a Lico modifier. We had an amber gel. Because the brick pattern, it was too red, so we kind of made it more yellow, which kind of fit our overall color palette.
Amazing. It looks really great. Let's take a look at how you built this.
So that's one thing that they didn't mention in the setup is they mentioned this this 120D2 with the spotlight that was going down the stairs in the background, but they didn't mention what all this blue lighting was. And remember when I was talking about why you didn't set your camera to have a warm color temperature is because of this blue light. So they took 4 quasar tubes and they placed them like, let me keep playing for a sec. There we go. So they took 4 quasar tubes and they placed them here, 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 and here, right behind sort of a diffusion that was in the bar area. And they also gelled them blue. So because you want to have that sharp color contrast between the blue and the orange, you should set your camera to daylight. And then when you gel a blue gel, or when you gel a daylight light, it'll look bluer. And then when you gel a daylight light with CTO, it'll look more orange. So you have a little bit, you have those lights, all of them daylight, but now they're pushing on either side of the color temperature spectrum, and you get that really nice color contrast. So in terms of the way that it looks like with a top-down diagram, we already covered the key light, which created this little sliver, right? We have the two quasars, which created this outline on the bottle. We have the third quasar up top, which created the highlight on the cap. We have the mini 20, which created the glow from the inside. And we also have 4 quasars over here, and actually a blue gel. I think each of them were gelled blue, actually. 4 blue quasars, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the background. And we have a 120D with what's called a spotlight mount. He called it Lico, but like Lico's a brand name, so we ain't saying that. We're calling it the spotlight mount. And then that spotlight mount was also gelled with CTO, which I actually would not recommend clipping a CTO to the spotlight mount because it's gonna burn. The spotlight mount, it concentrates that light, and even though it's LED lighting, over an extended period of time, it's still going to melt your gel. So what I would do is I would probably like put a 4x of CTO in front of it slightly. But honestly, for me personally, this area right here, that doesn't look like it even needed a spotlight mount. You could accomplish this kind of wash of color with just any light. Like you could accomplish this with a panel. You can accomplish this with just a light pointed at the wall. As long as it's kind of in this direction to accentuate the brick pattern and kind of break it up, it should be fine. I'm just checking the chat. Looks like everyone's doing good. Let's keep going.
Here's our second setup. It looks a little bit different. Why did you decide to go for this vibe?
Yeah, so this is all about paying attention to your client and your brand. This brand's a little more classy, a little more old school looking, so we went with a brick background, a wooden table, and a really interesting lighting mechanism. So we had the same rim light, 4-foot quasars on either side, 2-foot quasar up top, and then also, of course, the 250 diffusion taped to the back and shooting light through that to bring out the color of the beer.
So one thing that I would say is, see the setup on this one is pretty similar. So you still have those quasars on the side and the one 2-foot quasar on the top. But remember in the last setup, this mini 20, it was actually underneath the table pointing up. Now it is above the table pointing down. And what that creates is it creates this highlight on the table itself. And that gives it a completely different look, but it's still lighting up the background or the back of this bottle to give it that glow from the inside. So it's accomplishing 2 things in this case. It's giving us that glow and it's giving us that highlight on the table.
We had a mini 20 attached to a Dana dolly, which is typically used for camera movement, but we thought we'd kind of spice it up. Why does light have to stand still? Why can't the product stay there and light move around it, kind of like it's a spotlight almost in a fashion show? It just seemed like a cool idea and it fit the branding. I wanted the shot to start with the bottle in silhouette, but we already had a backlight illuminating the bottle, so we actually blocked the backlight at the beginning of the scene, so there really was just that rim around the light. And then as the key dollied into frame and illuminated the bottle, we slowly took out the flag. So it kind of felt like the seamless transition of silhouette and dark into illumination of this beautiful product.
And I really like that instead of just flicking the backlight on and off, you decided to do it at the same speed and the same way that that top light was going.
Yeah, it's more organic, it's more natural. You don't really notice it to the eye that so much is happening.
You also added one more special trick with production design to help that bottle look as appealing as possible. What did you do?
If you want a cold drink or cold beer, it's always essential to make the product look like it's sweating, like it's got condensation, like it's cold and ready to go, ready to drink. So we actually use glycerine, which you can buy at any drugstore. It's really cheap. You mix it with water, put it in a spray bottle, and you just spray down the bottle. And that mixture actually helps the liquid bead and kind of stay. If you just did water, it kind of runs and gets really wet and doesn't really have that kind of sexy look that you want. This is a really good way to make the bottle look cold and ready to drink.
And you could do that for a lot of different drinks that are supposed to be cold. So let's take a look at how you built this.
Cool.
So check out what was happening here. Not only is he doing a moving key, but he's doing a moving backlight or a moving rim light. So it's actually quite cool. So what's happening is, of course, like you have the quasars, right? The same ones that we had before. And then you have the Mini 20 and it's up high, right? Above the light. So it's going to create this highlight on the table. But he also has a moving key. So he has a Dana dolly here, and he put the other Mini 20 on an arm on the Dana dolly. So as the light moves from, I would say here, right? The light moves from there to there. So the dolly's back. The key light appears on the front of the bottle. But not only that, he had somebody Hollywooding, skirting off the backlight with a piece of cinefoil or black wrap, same thing, and at the same speed as the key light was dulling into frame. So he had somebody, and Hollywooding just means just holding it there, right? So he had a person. Look at this awesome drawing that I'm doing of this person right now. Ooh, wow. What a drawing. So he had a person with a giant arm holding some black wrap, right? And then that black wrap, that person was removing it at the same speed as the key light was coming in. Which is a really, really good trick. So let's actually look at it one more time to really appreciate it. And you can see that the rim light is not playing when this starts going missing, when the highlight starts going missing. Check it out. Pretty cool.
So that is your 4-minute film school on product video, or at least this particular product. Again, things to remember: take a look at the surface of the product and make sure that it is clean, it is spotless, that it's looking exactly like you want it to look.
And also don't forget to complement the labels and the branding of your product.
And take a look at the reflections on the actual item itself and make sure that you're shaping the light to complement the shape and size of the object so that your campaign is memorable. Speaking of,
I think we're back up. I think we should be good. Do let me know if you can. I think we're back up. If you can hear me, say pineapple. So if you can hear me, say pineapple. I give different keywords because then I can definitely tell that, like, oh, it's during this point that you can hear me. Okay, I'm getting some pineapples. Cool. So hopefully it stopped on my face and not when I was actually talking about actual content. But I wanted to ask you what you're working with, what light kit you have at your disposal, or do you just rent lights? Are you a rental type of person? I hope it works. Oh my goodness. This is not fun for me to drop out, and I apologize. But it's also not my fault. It's the Wi-Fi. Hello, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Mondo Cheapo says it's okay. We can talk about fruit for a while. Honestly, if I ever drop out, of course there's a siren outside. I'm in LA. If I ever drop out, I'm in the chat, so like let me know. Talk amongst yourselves for a minute and I'll be right back. I don't know why I dropped out, honestly. And now that I'm looking at the YouTube stream, it's a little bit washed out. So maybe I can adjust that a tad bit. Hold on. How is that? Hopefully that looks a little bit more contrasty. I don't like being washed out. That's not fun. All right, let's go on to our next video because I'm sure y'all want to know what we're talking about. Cinematic interviews. So we're going to talk about something like how you would shoot a cinematic interview for like a Netflix documentary or something like that. I think there's a lot of really good tips here, and I hope that you've been enjoying the stream so far. So let's get to it. Welcome to 4-Minute Film School. My name is Valentina V, and today, in today's episode, we're talking about cinematic on-location interviews. Let's go. Today we have William Helmuth, who's an amazing DP here in Los Angeles. He's worked with a bunch of awesome brands, Honda, Acura, Blizzard, Nerf. And today I've asked him to come and talk to us about interview lighting, but specifically on location cinematic interview lighting. Now, what are some rules of thumb that you have to think about before you enter that environment?
Well, the first thing I think about is what is the natural light there already doing? Once I figure that out, I think about how I can supplement that light. I'm not really trying to change things. I want to lean into what the light is already doing and then just supplement that. After that, I think about how I want my subject to feel against the background. Do I want him or her to kind of pop and stand out and there to be a lot of contrast, or do I want the subject to kind of like blend into his or her surroundings and just like feel like a part of this place?
And I'm sure a lot of it is also choosing the angle and what you want to show in the background and sort of like deciding where to place them. Let's quickly take a look at a few examples. So this first interview setup is very familiar to me because I watch a lot of Netflix. It's a subject sitting right in the middle of the frame, and they're looking right down the barrel of the lens, probably using like an Interrotron or something like that to not intimidate the subject with the lens. How did you approach this lighting setup?
I approached the space, took it all in. There's a lamp there. I turned the lamp on. I really liked how the light from the lamp was falling on the environment. So I decided like, well, I'm gonna try to lean into this. With the lamp on, I dropped 6 stops of ND onto my camera.
All right, so this is something to discuss. When you are lighting an indoor scene, and that indoor scene has practicals, I, and obviously William here, we both like to start with our practicals first. Why? And by practicals, I'm talking about actual lights that you see on the screen. And you want to start with your practicals first because you never know at what intensity that practical is going to be, and you never know whether or not you can adjust that practical as compared to all your other lights. For the most part, if you have some kind of dimming mechanism, then you don't have to worry about dimming the practical up and down. But a lot of times you're just using a standard household bulb, and when you're doing that, you don't have a lot of options. So you can either, number one, take down your ISO a little bit lower, so dimming the practical down that way. You can put a bunch of, I guess, gels like around the lampshade, a bunch of diffusion gels, so maybe you can tamp down the light that way. In this case, William used 6 stops of neutral density. You could also, if you want, you can increase your f-stop, so have less depth of field, but sacrifice that in order to have a properly exposed light. So you're probably also wondering, okay, but if I'm trying to properly expose the light, how do I do that? Like, maybe you use histograms to expose the light. And in this case, everything is way underexposed and the light is the only thing exposed. Most monitors that have some kind of like professional functions will have a way to do false color. And false color, it's not a left to right type of histogram that shows you your exposure values across a left to right spectrum. It's actually colors your entire monitor with different colors. So it'll show like, okay, like this is the hot spot, and then it goes into a different color, and then it goes into a different color, and you'll be able to see like where the hot spots are in your image and what's properly exposed, what's overexposed, what's underexposed. So I would definitely first do the practical, make sure that you're properly exposed for the practical, because more likely than not, your other lights, your film lights, you can dim, you can adjust, you can put diffusion over, you can do whatever, but first do the practical. And in this case, he did, it was too bright, so he used 6 stops of neutral density to kind of, make it less bright.
So that I was exposing for the lamp, nothing was blowing out. After that, I actually needed to pump a lot of light into the room. So I got a 300D with
Obviously.
a light dome and a...
I mean, he stopped it down 6 stops down, right? Which means now it's like there's sunglasses on his camera, so he needs to use super powerful lights to have that punch that he needs, to have the power that he needs.
Great, and then just drop some CTS in front of it real quick. And
so this is a color temperature straw gel. So it's different than color temperature orange. I would say it's a little bit more yellow than color temperature orange. It's more of a, I would say CTO is more of a color temperature changing gel, and CT straw is more of a look that you're trying to go for. And what he did is he used a gel that was in a 4x frame. That's what I recommend. In this case though, I mean, it wouldn't have mattered because he could still put the gel into, he could still take like a tiny CT straw gel. Let me actually make it orange. So you could take a tiny CT straw gel and insert it into the gel holder that is inside of that light dome. And because the gel holder is far enough from the diode itself, and there's no like multiplier like a spotlight mount or something. There's nothing that's like making the light even more intense. That gel is not going to burn. That gel is not going to melt. So it's okay if you have a small gel, if you don't have a giant frame of gel like this, it's okay to take a small one. Like I'm sure Lee filters or a lot of different companies make like kits, so you can buy like a bunch of gels together, and there's like half CTO, quarter CTO, straw, plus minus green, all that. So yeah, you can put that in the gel holder, or you can have like a giant frame of it. In this case, this is how he did it.
I panned it so it was falling on the subject, but also hitting a lot of the background. What that ended up doing was being not only a key light, but also a background light.
I would say it's not only a key light, which means it's going on him, and a background light, which means it's going on the background, but I would say it's also an eye light, which is creating this really nice sparkle in the eye. Usually, if you're... I'm trying to find a light around here. I think I had one around here, but I don't remember where I put it. Usually, if your key light isn't also your eye light, you can bring in like a tiny LED light and then have that as just a pop. I can't find my LED light. I honestly don't know where I put it, but you can have that as just like a pop of something in your eye. You don't want your eyes to go dead, especially in an interview scenario. So, but in this case, he didn't need an extra eye light.
So I noticed that you kept the color temperature of the fill daylight balanced, but your background is a lot more tungsten.
Oh, and then Duck66 Films says catch light for the win. Yeah, it's an eye light or a catch light. Either way.
Everything in the scene was playing very, very warm, and that's fine, but I thought it might be nice to just have some very subtle color contrast in there, and to me, the fill side just seemed like a very natural place to put that. So the shadows were still shadows, but they just read as slightly cooler shadows. It doesn't feel like there's a light coming from that direction. It just feels like cool shadows.
And I like that in this setup, you can also throw in a B cam and have a side angle, and you don't have to change the lighting up at all.
I would say for this B cam though, what I would have done is I think that there's a way too much negative space here. And negative space just means an area in the image where nothing is happening. I would have either maybe put a light slash through it, so something like that. So all you do to create a light slash is you take a hard light and you put barn doors on it and you close it up a little bit, or you take a hard light and you create a slash with two cutters with two floppies or something like that. I would have done it either with light or with production design. So like maybe take that painting that's hanging over here and instead hang it over here, just to break it up some way.
Angle, and you don't have to change the lighting up at all.
Exactly.
Let's take a look.
So very, very simple 3 light setup here. We have our practical, which is just a regular bulb. Then we added 6 stops of ND, so that necessitated all of the other lights to be at 100% brightness. So then we took this 300D, right? We put the light dome on it, light dome 2. And I also believe that the light dome 2, he put a grid on the front of that light dome. And grids are really, really important. What grids do is, without the grid, the spread of the light coming from the light dome would be... Oh, hold on. Let me change the color. Would be like this. Ugh. Color change, please. I think my pen program just gave up. Let me quit it and reopen it real quick. My pen program was like, what? Okay. So I would say that without the grid on the front, the lighting would kind of go this way. So it would be aligned with the way that the light dome is shaped, right? It wouldn't be going from here because obviously the light can't go from there. The light dome is a dome, it's skirted. So it would be going here. But what would happen then is, because you have that color temperature straw frame here, you would have a bunch of light spillage that wasn't color temperature straw on these edges here. And that's not what you want when you're gelling the entire light. So in this case, putting the grid on the front, and of course you diffuse first, so he has the diffusion on the dome and then he has the grid, because it won't work if the grid is on the other side of the diffusion. Like it won't work if you place the grid here, for example. So because of that grid, the light is then going straight. So that straightens out that beam of light so that it's both soft and directional. And because of the grid, it is now able to intersect that color temperature straw gel fully. So so that's the 300D 2 with the light dome 2 with the CT straw. Then he has a 120D 2, I believe, with just the regular reflector that comes included with the fixture, and the reflector narrows the beam angle of the light. So again, instead of with just the naked bulb, the light would go like that, but with the reflector, it changes it to a 60-degree angle, so it goes like that, right? And it's able to entirely hit and fill this bounce board, so then all of the light can bounce off and onto our subject there. And this is a cooler temperature, so this is with no color on it, so this is just daylight. And then of course the key light is coming in as straw, and then this is pure tungsten. And that is what this ended up looking like.
So the second interview setup was in this sort of arcade room, and what's the vibe that you wanted to convey with this interview?
Well, I imagined a documentary about an arcade video tournament champion or something like that, so I decided to light this almost like she was like a fighter, this tough person, you know. Just give this like gritty feel.
So let's break down the lighting. Your first light was a top light right above. What was that?
So I got the 300D inside of a China ball attachment, hung that just a couple feet above her face so that it wasn't super toppy. I wasn't getting like crazy raccoon eyes. Then foam core bounce right beneath her face just to fill in those shadows a little bit, you know, beneath her eyes, beneath her neck, things like that. It still has that nice toppy feel, but it's filled in a little bit.
And you skirted off that China ball that it wouldn't just like ping everywhere.
Yeah, I don't want it filling up the entire room. Again, I want it to feel like a spot.
So this is actually an early prototype of the Aputure lantern, which you can purchase now, and it comes with a skirt. So here he was using cinefoil or black wrap or black foil, whatever you want to call it. And he had that Aputure 300D, which is the main workhorse at the moment that Aputure makes. But there's stuff coming up. If you look at the Aputure page on Wednesdays, they're doing product announcements. So this is a China ball, kind of, but it's also called a lantern. That's what Aputure calls it. And nowadays it comes with a skirt that is in sections, so you can Velcro the sections together, or say you want to roll a section up, you can do that too. So you can like skirt off this section like that, have it rolled up, but then this is all the way down. So if you wanted to do that, you could. In this case, because this was a prototype and we didn't have the skirt available, he used cinefoil, and then what he also did was he placed a flag up here, a black flag up here, so that the only light that was shining through was coming from kind of the bottom front of the China ball. the lantern. He could have also just used a light dome, but whatever. And also take a look at how he clamped this. So he has a clamp that he is pretty much clamping to the rafters over here. It makes sense because this is a wide interview shot. So if you're shooting with a wide lens, like, where are you going to place the C-stand? It's harder to place the C-stand places that aren't in the frame, especially if you have a lot of C-stands or a lot of lights going. So if you can find a location that lets you clamp a light, all the better.
Light on her.
It reminds me kind of interrogation-y kind of setup, but a little bit softer and more interview style. So I also noticed that you threw up a couple lights in the background to add a little bit extra dimension. What were those?
I got a 300D behind one of the arcade sets to create some lines on the ground and texture on the actual games, and then a 120D on the left side of the frame doing the exact same thing.
You can see that they're not forgetting about the floor. I think a lot of people always forget about the floor. They leave the floor unlit, or they don't take the opportunity to think about creative lighting for the floor. And in this case, they just aimed 2 lights directly at the floor, hard lights, and those lights created these slashes on the ground. Also, in this behind the scenes shot, you can see that that black floppy I was talking about earlier. And you can see that everything is clamped to the ceiling because the shot is like this wide, right? So you would need a pretty long arm to telescope that over the shot if you weren't clamping it. And of course, if you have a long arm, you need some kind of support, sandbags, etc., or like a big, like a menace arm, like huge, or crane, whatever, we don't want to get into that. We just want to clamp stuff.
Very important. People forget about the ground. If your subject is sitting and you're seeing the ground, sometimes it's good to have a little bit of more texture there, a little bit more play. So let's see how that works out.
I would say he could have probably, I am just so nitpicky. You see that there's a little bit of light spill happening. And that happens when a beam of light pings the camera lens, and maybe he did it on purpose. Personally, I would have moved that light or skirted off a little more, or use the matte box on the camera to close it up a little more to avoid any kind of light spill, so that this entire area is just clean and the same lighting quality throughout. I noticed things like that, but maybe he meant to do that. So one advantage of actually using the lantern instead of the light dome is specular highlights and shadow roll off. So you can see that the highlight is concentrated in the center of her face and is rolling off really nicely on the edges. That is a combination of the lantern being a little bit of a smaller source in itself than the light dome, and also of the lantern being a rounded light source instead of a flat light source. So a rounded light source is going to give you more rounded or wrappy shadows, and on people of color especially, that is super nice. It looks super nice because their skin accepts specular highlights a lot better, and specular highlights are just like highlights that are concentrated in one area specifically. So in this case, actually, I take it back. He definitely using the lantern was a good decision. So this is this setup. Let's take a look at it really quickly here. So you have the camera here, you have our talent there, and you have that 300D 2 with the lantern, and that lantern is skirted off with cinefoil on this side, and it has a black flag up here. Then there's also this bounce at the bottom. It's just a white bounce. I would prefer a silver bounce if I'm working with darker skin tones, again because of the specular highlights in their skin. So there's a bounce there, and then you have a 120D and a 300D and they're aimed at the floor. And I'm sure that the 300D was at 50% power when he was doing this so that they would match.
So that is your episode on shooting cinematic interviews on location. One more time, William, if we're going on location, what are the things that we have to watch out for before we set our lighting up?
All right, so the first thing is pay attention to the natural light that's happening at your location, natural or practical. Lean into that, don't resist it, you don't have to try to change it. Second, figure out what's happening and then figure out how you're gonna supplement that light. Finally, be very intentional about how you want your subject to feel against the background. Do you want him or her to stand out, blend in? Think outside of the box.
You know, there's so many documentaries out these days, like on Netflix, that use on-location cinematic lighting, so we want to know.
We don't want to know. That is it for the examples. Now I'm going to do the monumental task of figuring out how to connect to the Discord. Maybe Jake can help me out and like tell me what to do, but we were gonna have a Q&A, but maybe it's easier to do the Q&A directly in the YouTube chat. So yeah, Jake, let me know what I should do, because currently everything's working. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. Let me know if you liked this, by the way, because I'd love to talk more about this. Let me know if you join the chat room later. Let me know where you're watching from. I am streaming from Los Angeles. It is 9 in the morning, which is why I have an energy drink with me. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Mondo Cheapo asks, Valentina, for a powerful yet portable and battery-powered light, is the 120D Mark II a good all-rounder? It's an excellent light. The 120D Mark II is a hard light source. It has a Bowens mount, so you can attach a bunch of great modifiers like barn doors, snoots, the Fresnel mount, which is going to concentrate that light and throw it farther, the spotlight mount. Also, the 120D2 has DMX connection, so you can put it on a DMX board, so you can put it up in a lighting grid and control it from afar. Also, every Aputure light comes with a remote like this, which allows you to control it, but the 120D2 is also app controlled. So there's an app called Sidus Link that you can get in the App Store, which will allow you to control it. It also has a bunch of effects like flickering bulb, TV flicker, strobe, so you can do all sorts of effects. So the 120D2 is an excellent, excellent light. I would say though, if you are looking to counteract the power of the actual sun, like if you're using the sun as a background light, of course you always should try to use the sun as a background light when you're only working with the sun and one other light. Like if I have no lights at all and I'm outside and the sun is my only light, my only source, I put it behind me and then I take a bounce and I try to bounce the sun, forward, right? But if I have a 300D, then I can use that 300D, and even diffused, it's going to give me a little bit more power than the 120D. But the 120D2 is an excellent, excellent, excellent light. I would highly recommend. So Hoya Vision TV asked a question about your first kit to get. The first thing I ever got was a $15 5-in-1 reflector diffuser, and I still use it to this day. Right now it's blocking my key light from hitting my wall because my wall is boring and it's white and my key light is daylight balanced. So if I didn't have this guy right here blocking that key light, then it would spill onto my wall. So that's the first thing I got, because with a 5-in-1 reflector diffuser, you can, like I said, you can reflect sunlight onto a person. You can diffuse sunlight from above to give them a really nice flattering look. There's a million things you can do. And the most important that I found was when I was coming up, I was just assisting, and if I had one of those, people loved having me on set because I'd just be like using my reflector diffuser. But as far as like a introductory light kit, you also can't go wrong with the Mini 20 flight kit from Aputure. So it's those little Mini 20 lights. They're also a single point source. They have a built-in Fresnel. They have built-in barn doors. You can put two gel slots in there, and they come with color temperature orange gels. They also come with clamps, they come with batteries, and the batteries are Sony NPF batteries, so they're flight safe. So when I shoot documentaries overseas, all I do is I bring that one 3-light kit that Aputure sells, and it also comes with 3 stands. So just bring that kit, 3 stands, I bring this guy for reflecting or diffusing, and I could pretty much set up an interview scenario anywhere with just that simple kit, and it's already made for you. So Syed Ali Raza, sorry if I said your name wrong, says, how would you best define cinematic in lighting? There's honestly, like, I don't even know if that's, I know that this particular stream is called How to Do Cinematic Lighting, but is there really an all-encompassing term? I don't think there is. I think cinematic has more to do with dynamic range of your camera's sensor than it does with lighting, because the more dynamic range you have, the more you can blow out your highlights, blow out, or recede things into shadow and still have information to pick up from there. So there's, I mean, all sorts of lighting has been done in cinema, but like as a general rule, I would say it's less contrasty. It's playing with rules of middle ground, background, foreground, and it's using lighting to split up scenes or to split up negative space or to highlight certain things. There's diegetic lighting, which is like practicals that you see in the scene, and using those to your advantage. There's non-diegetic lighting, which is everything else that you don't see in the scene that's attributing to the light. I think one thing that a lot of cinematographers do, which is super useful, is you take a light source, like say for example, a window that is diegetic, but the window is not actually powerful enough. Say it's like an overcast day, right? It's not actually powerful enough to throw the light onto your subject. So you supplement that with additional lighting, but make it look like it came from the window. And I think that that is a huge thing that DPs do. They look at, okay, what sources make sense in this scene? Is it a window light? Is it a light from a lamp? Is it this or is it that? And how do I supplement that? How do I complement that with my own lights? Oh, I'm glad I pronounced your name right. Yay. All right, so it looks like we are coming up on that hour. I hope you really enjoyed this stream. If you want to follow me, you really don't have to, but if you do, I'm Valentina V on Twitter and Valentina.v on Instagram, because someone stole my name on Instagram. It be like that sometimes. Anyway, have a great rest of your night. I guess it's your night, my day here, and have a great weekend.